Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. I am your host, Dean DeCespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Angle. What is up, man?
I'm hanging in there, buddy. The word for today's podcast is resilience. And so I think we'll talk about that in many different ways because there was some great football played, and depending on your perspective, maybe some not so great football played.
Fair enough. Obviously, huge Champions League quarterfinals. You know, that gets wrapped up this past week. We get a chance to get excited, look ahead to the semis. We know who our semifinalists are. I think it's worth kind of going through these four matchups that we witnessed this past week. Quick preview of the semis. And then, you know, just basically do how we do, get everybody pumped up for the proceedings. And then, just break it down as only the boys from the ITC can do.
That sounds good to me. I'm sure there will likely be another preview. So the first leg of the semifinals, the first one starts on April 19th. So we got a little bit of time. So we'll probably do a proper preview right before then. We'll see what happens. Maybe, hopefully not any injuries, but maybe some changes in availability, maybe some players coming back. I think a little quick breakdown of this, little baby preview right now, and keep it pushing.
Let's go. I love it. All right, man. Where do you want to get started?
We got to start with your Gunners. Arsenal 3, Real Madrid 0. Absolutely electric match. Can we crack a beverage for your Gunners and just for you in general, my good man?
I appreciate that. Yeah, let's do it. Cheers to the Arsenal.
Cheers to you, buddy.
To you as well, man. Okay, Arsenal 3, Real Madrid 0. I was really surprised by this. Obviously, I picked Arsenal to win 2-1, but I thought Madrid would advance on the heels of how good they looked versus Arsenal in the first leg. And then obviously beating Barcelona. Say what you want about that match, was a huge victory for them. I think the thing I'm going to remember from this one, and I want to start here. Alberto Toril, who we talked about, you know, potential ITC show watcher. But in all seriousness, I wasn't sure what they were doing. You know, doesn't make a sub until the 76th minute. Madrid looked super flat. I think in my notes I wrote down, we're 5 minutes into the game, and the only touches Madrid has had has been clearances and blocks. Like literally nothing, you know, to start with. And then just to have sort of that kind of hapless performance early, not make a tactical change really, not make a lineup change until 76, like 5/6 of the matches is over. That struck me as just bizarre, just because they looked aimless and a little bit gassed, to be honest.
I just couldn't agree with you more, man. It's funny to hear it from an Arsenal fan's perspective. You know, I consider myself a neutral. Like, obviously I root for your team to do well, but I don't have nearly as much skin in the game as you. And it was like, you know, after that just absolute nightmare 15 minutes that they had to start the second half, in my notes, and I quote, Real Madrid is still alive, but man, oh man, they are barely holding on. They need a shot in the arm named Alba Redondo in the worst fucking way. And I wrote that around the 60th minute. I have no idea what took so long to get her in the match. If she was gassed too, or if she just said, like, you know, hey, Gaffer, like, I don't have enough legs in me to give you a full 30 or give you a 45 or something. Like, I guess we don't know that part. But that game, they were dying for a substitute, and it just didn't come until it was way too late.
Yeah, man, totally, I think. And I don't think it had to do necessarily with fatigue, because Toril subs in 3 players at the same time. Yasmine, Redondo, and Feyer. Like, so it couldn't be that all 3 of them were like, hey, I only got 15 minutes of me.
Right, that'd be weird.
the other 10 have, I could give you 75. Sure. I thought it was really rough too. Their offense couldn't get it going at all. You look at the touches: Caroline Weir 31, Senior Brune 28 in only 75 minutes, Atenea 28, Linda Caicedo 20 touches. And those other 3 players played 90. They played the full 90. You look,
Yep.
Beth Mead alone in 17 minutes had 20 touches, the same as Linda Caicedo in 90 minutes. Unbelievable, to kind of like just fumble the opportunity that poorly. Mariona had 93 touches in this one, like
There you
just
go.
and all over the field, a ton in advanced positions. I think Mariona has been undoubtedly the Arsenal MVP this season.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's definitely straightforward. She obviously gets the big goal in this one, but for me, this was the Alessia Russo game. We saw Alessia Russo at the 9 again, and I think I put together what we're seeing. I think when you see Alessia Russo fall deeper, play make, with precision, with great decision making, it's tantalizing. But the reality is, Russo is a 9. She's an elite finisher of crosses. She gets into great position. Her work rate we've talked about a ton on the show. And then in big matches, this was a big match. She comes up huge. For me, this is the Alessia Russo game.
Yeah, it's 100% the Alessia Russo game. And talk about great touch. The dagger to win off that Monum cross. The touch to just kind of give it that little bit, and then it still goes kind of far post from where she is to score it. It's an absolutely phenomenal touch. I mean, it's superstar type stuff from Alessia Russo. It was her game. She could have had damn 4 goals in this one. Like if some luck had changed, she was barely off. Yeah, she was barely offside on that one. Just Real Madrid. They just didn't have anything for it. I'm glad you mentioned Senia Brun. Like you said, she played 76 minutes. She had 0 touches inside the attacking 18. I know she's not the entire offense, but she is a very good player. But your chances, if you're Madrid, of doing much of anything are very much slimmed if she doesn't have any touches inside the opponent's box. That's a recipe for disaster in itself.
100%. Yeah, and we've talked on the show a ton about calibration. The idea of like getting shots, getting looks, working stuff out through the course of the game, so that when it's like prime time, championship rounds, you sort of have a feel for the ball, the conditions, the defense, the angles. Like what's available to you. And watching Madrid kind of scramble late. I think Atenea had a chance and she was like nowhere close. And I'm like, this is her first chance. And we're like in the 80s. Yep. Like what, of course, like why would she be able to like just pull out some magic? This is her first real look at goal. I thought it was real negligence on the part of Toril. Total fumble, I think, in terms of game plan and like, just approaching this one, the zone flashed a graphic somewhere. Pardon me. DAZN flashed a graphic somewhere in the first half that had the possession 68-32. And those numbers reminded me so much of Barcelona last week. And I'm like, is Madrid just coming here and playing Arsenal as if they're Barcelona? Like, because we talked about how even these teams could be on any given day. If Madrid, plays to their potential, they're winning. If Arsenal plays to their potential, they're winning. I think these teams are a little bit more even than the stats showed, I think even across the 2 matches. But for Madrid to either have shown Arsenal that level of respect, borderline fear, or to just maybe they were just gassed. I think it's one or the other. But either way, I think it was pretty clear that the game plan was off. They were off, and it was going to be an uphill battle. Even having them be up 2 goals on aggregate didn't feel great. From the Real Madrid fandom slice in my brain or in my heart, wherever you want to think about that, was just like not going to be today for Las Blancas.
Hey, you're absolutely right, man. And maybe it's just a mix of the game plan wasn't great. Maybe there were some tired legs. Maybe there was some of that letdown match stuff that we had talked about. Yep. Like they come off these 2 gigantic wins, and they're like, "All right, we're here now. Like we're going to go ahead. We're going to kick Arsenal's head in again," and it just wasn't there for them. I think, they had 2 shots on target in the entire match. They just didn't do anything. And your point about
4 shots total.
4 shots total. I mean, it's not going to get it done, man. And I think it's a great point to ask. did they look at the great success against Barcelona and be like, okay, maybe let's just do that again. Arsenal's a totally different team with different attributes who you match up with way better. So like it's not a cookie cutter thing. You have to adjust your style every time. So it's a bitter end for Las Blancas, but it finished better than last year's Champions League. They're on an upward trajectory. It's just a really gross way to go out.
Yeah, rough day for sure. Last quick note here. Obviously, our guy Sharple's on the call. I mean, as soon as I love the zone because you never know who's going to be on, and then as soon as the voice comes in, as you hit play on the stream, you're just like, oh, this is a big game. Our guy's on it, and it was funny because I don't know if he talked about this on the show, and I don't want to like put his business out here, but suffice it to say, he's not a fan of Manchester City. And he had a funny quote in the match where he's talking about Chloe Kelly. Let me get it up here. And he says, I don't know if you picked up on it, but he's like, Chloe Kelly, quote, she seems to be enjoying football again, end quote. Definitely felt like a subtle dig against City, but true pro, tough to notice unless you're really, really locked in.
I did notice that, in case you were curious. Sharples is the best, man. I mean, he was phenomenal in that match. Gave it the weight that it needed. His goal calls were incredible. The anytime anybody's hitting the woodwork, his reactions are just fantastic on it. I mean, he was absolutely on top of his game, and he got that was a good shot by him. He got that one up there.
Yeah, got that. I was like, we got to hit this. All right. Should we move ahead? Lyon?
Please.
Lyon Bayern? Let's do it. Okay. Lyon 4, Bayern 1. Lyon takes the tie in aggregate 6-2. What'd you see in this one?
Like I say about Lyon almost every time we talk about him, the super weapon is fully operational right now. Mm-hmm. The defense is incredible. The scoring is great. They string together passes that, go from defense to attack extremely quickly. But I want to give Bayern a lot of credit here. Like I really liked their first 15 minutes. I thought they came out and played with great energy. They are holding the ball without looking too pressured. And in the 18th minute, DAZN showed the graphic. Bayern had 55% of the ball up to that point. And I'll say, even though they stretched it, I think they ended up stretching it to like somewhere around. I think they ended the half
59
above the 60s. Oh, okay.
There we go. 59. No, for the match they were 59-41.
There we go. And and I think it leveled out in the second half. But according to our pals at FootMob, they stretched it to about 62% in the first half alone. But even then, you could start to see some signs where Lyon was looking a little more dangerous kind of as the first half went on. And it was like, okay, so, Bayern, they obviously have a lot of work to do here. But, there's just too much. There's too much over at Lyon to really stop. And sorry, I'm jumping around here. The Clara Boul goal was fantastic. I'm gonna go to my notes here. This is what I wrote in real time. After the Clara Boul goal, we get to halftime. It's a great half by Bayern. And here's what I wrote. Quote, am I regretting my flippant 3-1 Lyon prediction based on what's been happening in the match so far? Question mark. And then me because I'm a total jerk. Of course not! Exclamation point. I feel better about it! Exclamation point, which I'm not sure how true that was. Bayern got their goal out of the way, and the 3 from Lyon are incoming. So, end quote. And so I was like talking myself into like, because at this point, I still have faith in my hot prediction streak from the week before, because this was the first match that I had watched. So I was like, okay, the Sandman's here. Like I'm still a soothsayer. I still know exactly what's going to happen in these matches. We'll kind of talk about that more as things go along. But Bayern had a great first half. It's just it's almost impossible to sustain against a team like Lyon.
I totally agree with that. I love the Bayern start for sure. Well, I had something here. Yeah, the one thing that really hurt, Pernille Harder, 67 minutes of action, 0 appearances in my game notes. That was tough. Yeah. And that Lyon front 3, I think, we've talked a lot about Lyon's defense this season. Haven't talked too much about their offense. But that front three, I think maybe is the best front three in the world.
Got an
Chewinga,
argument.
Diani, Dumornay. And then if you want to expand it out, who's the first off the bench? Ada Hegerberg, and play that game. Who's the best 3+1? I think Lyon's got it as well. I mean, I think they're just unbelievable. And what they unlocked in this game, Diani, her service, her passing, her vision. Like, I think, there's so many, the goals come from everywhere at Lyon, for such a long period of time. And I think, Diani has the profile of like this goal scorer. She's got such great skill, great touch, great creativity, that I feel like maybe there's been a lot of pressure for her to score. And maybe like the passing vision hasn't necessarily, I mean, she's got it, but in this match, she was dealing. Like, she was just like, okay, I'm going to draw you out, create a lane, and then just drop an absolute dime. I mean, she gets the 2 assists. You look at what is this? The first 3, Diani to Dumornay to make it 1-1. The tie is probably over at this point. I wrote probably over, and then Diani unassisted a few minutes later, and then I wrote definitely over at this point, and then she gets another assist to Chewinga. I mean, if she can distribute like that in and around the box, or just like in the final third, but she's always playing so far upfield that if she's got the ball there and she's looking to pass, I mean, Lyon's got the runners and they've got the finishers. I mean, you could even throw Heaps in there as somebody that you can find with a good ball who's going to be able to finish. That takes that offense up a level for me.
It's a great call out. I think I'm gonna stand up for MLS, P3. I know some of our other pals. I apologize. I'm trying to do this from memory, but our Barcelona pals, Betuelo, Payor, CGH as your 3, and then first off the bench, Pina. I think I take that over Lyon's 4, not by a ton though. Your point stands. They're arguably the best front 3 plus 1 in the world. I mean, it's those 2, right?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, CGH is really what kind of takes it up a big level for sure.
Yeah.
But Payor, honestly, I've got to see Payor do it in some of these as we get to semis.
Sure.
We'll see Barcelona, Chelsea. I'd like to see Payor do some finishing in that matchup and kind of like really, because like I'll tell you what, Pina, you're first off the bench. If I'm Eva Payor, I might be, breaking a sweat or 2, looking over my shoulder, maybe kind of like pulling a muscle, watching what Pina's doing out here. So that we'll get to that a little bit later, but I think I still would take Lyon just because of the physicality, the athleticism. There was a play where Zigiotti for Bayern is trying to reach out and grab Dumornay and foul her and just end the chance. And it's just like grasping at a ghost. Like, she should have been able to grab her and end it, is not able to do it. And I think they scored on that play. Just an incredible, offensive, display by Lyon. The defense, there as well. Basha ball's back. She had an absurd laser to Ada Hegerberg that gets kind of caught up in her feet, but a ball that looked like it traveled 35 yards and didn't go higher than 17 or 18 feet in the air, just like an absolute rope. And it harkened back to, I had to go way back to kind of find the comp here. Let me see it. I've got it here in my notes. Reminded me of, basically there was a Tiger Woods drive. I think it was a 2017 Hero World Challenge in Bahamas. I don't have it in the doc, but It was a par 4, 336 yards, the 7th hole. And Woods blasts one from the tee, and he reaches the green, 336 yards, 16 or 17 feet away from the cup, and then he's got a putt for eagle, and of course he buries it. Of course he does. That's basically the golf equivalent of Basha ball.
I love that. I mean, we've compared footballers to a lot of different sports. Golf is one that we've rarely used. I know we've used it a couple times in the past, but that's a good shout. I love that. To your
Oh,
larger
I
point,
got
though.
I got I got
Go ahead.
one more on Boscher before, because I can't miss this. Did you
Of
catch the
course.
one in the 82nd where there's a ball that like kind of like squirts out? Bosch is the only one, near it, and Boscher runs away from the ball just so she could turn around and get a run up and then do one of her Boscher ball crosses. It was
Oh
like
yeah,
super comical, and I was just like, "Oh my god, I've never seen this before." But it was like, yeah, of course, do that.
yeah, because she knows the angles. She knows like where she wants her plant foot to be. To be when she hits the strike. Yeah, I mean she's such a next level genius. Obviously, ITC favorite for a good reason. I think your larger point stands about DNE the distributor on top of DNE the goal scorer. It makes them
Hmm.
wildly dangerous at all times. And again, credit to Bayern. Excuse me, but they just don't. They just weren't ever going to have enough. Lyon is on a mission. They are on their march to the final, I believe, and they're trying to lift this trophy once again, and it doesn't look like they're going to let much get in their way.
Yeah, I definitely don't think so. I mean, the last thing I wanted to mention, we talked about the Lyon defense for sure. One thing I picked up on in this match is when they press you or when they trap you, they're almost perfect at like the geometry of the trap. Like it's
Yeah,
never two players like approaching one spot. It's like it's almost like they're like, oh, I'm going to cut this 360 into 180. You take this half, I take this half, and the trap is always just so effective. And it's like they just know. It's almost like some ESP. They know when they're going to sprint and dart towards the ball, and the whoever's carrying the ball, and they're just unbelievable at it. Like they just don't let once they reach you, you're not getting out. And like just watching the geometry of the trap and the press it's crazy impressive. Like you're just like, damn, what is the counter to that? I mean,
yeah,
it's really tough, and they've got big physical defenders in the defensive midfield at center back, and athletic too. Like Wendy Renard, watching her in this one, get around and track people down. Bayern's not the fastest team out there, but to see her like really always in position, sometimes half a step ahead, sometimes a full step ahead, you're just like,
yep.
damn, like like you said, Bayern was absolutely drawing dead today.
Yeah, man. And that I think that comes from they just have a level of like I don't know if it's institutional knowledge, but like we talk about a lot of their
Mm-hmm.
players. Every player they have on the field is an incredibly savvy player. They're incredibly
Yep.
smart players. So to your point, they cut off those angles and then they know where each other are going to be. I know we've talked about that quite a bit. They're and I use the word for them and Barcelona and now Orlando Pride, the reigning double winners here in America. These are juggernauts. These are teams that you have to get almost everything right and then pray they have some misses to even have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they've got they've got really solid depth too. And
Oh yeah.
a player like Dumornay, when they do sort of like swap out that front three, like in a 5 minute period where they bring in Hegerberg, Majri,
Yeah.
and Lesumer, and then like Dumornay just drops back, and now it's like, okay, this is a whole other set of problems to deal with.
Yeah.
Really makes them a tough competitor. I'm going to be doing a lot more thinking about this Lyon side, obviously, as Arsenal approaches the semifinal matchup. I want to kick it to you though, off the top. I mean, just thinking through it does feel like it's going to be super uphill for Arsenal. Absolutely. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Lyon's better defensively. They're better offensively. I'm not sure where Arsenal has an advantage, if anywhere. I'd have to really think through and kind of like dig deep and try to put something together. But what's your first, as you start to kind of consider that matchup? What are you thinking about? What are you looking at?
I mean, you could have some giant you get well. I mean, first of all, you got to hope for two giant Van Domselaar games. I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Who was good? Who was good late against Madrid for sure?
Absolutely. I the my mind is going to we talk a lot about Lyon's defense, and then we've spent a decent amount of time here talking about Lyon's attack, like their front three. I don't know, man, and this is this might be kind of like your cliche, like if you think about American football, like this game's going to be won in the trenches type of cliche.
Mm.
But I'm really interested to see Lyon's midfield versus Arsenal's midfield. So let's think about Lyon and going by minutes in league play and some of the Champions League games. You're almost assuredly going to get Heaps, Demaris, and Marojan.
Mm-hmm.
And then off the bench, you have Majri, Debritz, and Van de Donk. That's your Lyon side. And then you think
Yep.
about your gunners. You're going to get Caldente, Monum, and Little, assuming that Slegers doesn't try for the let's put Russo at the 10 and play Blackstenius up top. But as you pointed out, I'm guessing Renee Slegers listened to the show and she heard you and was like, okay, that's not a good idea. Well, stop doing that.
Naturally.
So you have Caldente, Monum, and the legend Kim Little. And then coming off the bench, you're usually going to get Cooney Cross, Valti, and Ford will play some attacking, and then she'll drift into the midfield. So you kind of think about those six, kind of going up against each other. I feel like that's probably where these games are going to have to be won. If you're Arsenal, can Arsenal 6 at least play to a draw with that Lyon midfield, like not draw in terms of scoring, but like a draw, like hold their own against them, and then maybe give Russo a chance to maybe score some goals up front. But I'm curious where your head's at.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously you called out those possession numbers, Bayern and Lyon earlier. I mean, I think that would be a little bit of a formula. Just try to hold the ball, and like keep it out of the hands of those players. Yeah. Maybe not commit so much of that midfield forward if you're Arsenal, and maybe try to more be like, okay, we want to steal one. I thought Chloe Kelly was really good, could be dangerous. That's a player that could give Lyon some problems. Also very creative. I think the lineups are going to be huge. I would definitely expect to see Leah Valti off the bench. Cooney Cross, I mean, hasn't, didn't look sharp in her last Champions League outing. I think that's only going to get magnified against a team like Lyon. And then I think the biggest issue is probably going to be that Lyon front three, where there's absolutely a physicality, a speed, and a strength advantage pretty much at every position. Their 3 versus our 4. I mean, we've got McCabe that's going to kick you in the shin if need be, which is always appreciated.
Always.
Emily Fox too. Happy to kind of like muck it up a bit. That's going to be an absolute battle. But yeah, it is. I don't quite see a pathway. Definitely not too many pathways for Arsenal. To advance to. We're talking about the final potentially. For a team that didn't even make the group stage last year. So huge victory in and of itself. But I definitely would expect Lyon to reach a final again this season.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I think this is a successful run for Arsenal. Like you pointed out, they didn't even make the group stage last year. You're running up against Lyon, who is at absolute worst the third best team in the world. Leah Williamson has been shaky in spots, and the last group of forwards that you want to be shaky against is especially one led by Melchi Dumornay. But then, you think about the others around her. If Williamson has one of those weird mistakes that she has had a couple of, it seems like in the past few matches, those will get cashed in. That's almost a 100%. Given that Lyon will cash those in.
Yep. All right, so that's something that we'll definitely keep an eye on. Maybe they've got a couple weeks to kind of put together, I don't know, some wildcat offense or something that we haven't seen before.
Yeah,
we're going to need something crazy. Let's go ahead though to the Thursday matchups. Sorry, buddy. Chelsea 3, Manchester City Football Club 0. Chelsea takes the tie 3-2 on aggregate. Again, going to kick it to you. Where do you want to get started with this one?
I was even looking at my notes in real time. I don't think I really lost my optimism until like the 70th minute, right around the 73rd minute, where Viv Miedema had a chance, and it looked like she was going to bring bring City back level on aggregate, and then like anything was going to happen. But when that went, maybe like a foot, maybe a foot and a half wide left. I don't even know if it was a foot wide left.
It was
Once
so
it
close.
doesn't, it was very close. Once that missed, I was like, okay, that probably did it. But for me, as our pals who watch the program with us, usually I tend to be, I can get a little pessimistic from time to time. Even though I went into this match, predicting a 2-1 City win, and things did not look great from the start. I just thought, like, okay, we still have Miedema out there. She could make something happen. Kettleline could make something happen. I do need to say on the front end that I blanked in the predictions part pre-match, where I mentioned Yamashita. I underestimated the severity of her injury. So I did not. I think I missed reporting on hers. And then I also predicted a goal from Alba Fujino, who was not available to play. I think that the severity of her injury and Shaw's injury were disclosed by Cushing after we recorded. So let me just crank up the excuse machine on those. But we know Fujino has been dealing with those injuries. But no Fujino, no Shaw, no Yamashita, which I still think Kiara Keating did great, did everything she could in Yamashita's absence. But all that to say, it was too much from Chelsea in the first half. But even with that, I'm not walking away that disappointed. I mean, it's a brutal way to lose, but they still had a chance to get an equalizer on aggregate 70-plus minutes into the match. I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of.
Definitely not anything to be ashamed of. And I think I'm with you. When I reread my notes, I was like, oh man, I'm like, this felt a lot closer in my notes than it did in memory, which is a little trippy. I think the first red flag for me was when they flashed the substitutes, the lineups at the beginning, and City's got like 4 field subs: Coombs, right, Park, Lazelle, and Weinreuter. I'm like, that's not great.
No.
So, I mean, you mentioned those players that were out, and that's already in addition to the 2 that have been mentioned pretty much all season, Hemp and Greenwood. It was always going to be tough. The Lucy Bronze strike early in the match that bounces into like open space, and it was like one of those cameras playing tricks on you kind of situations where you're not sure who's going to run onto it because the person that's going to run onto it is not in frame. And then when you see it's Sandy Baltimore running onto it, I was just like, oh no, this is not going to be good. And she just tattoos it into the net to give them that score. And then Natalie Bjorn in the first, she clearly doesn't want to give up that center back spot. She doesn't care how much money they paid for Naomi Girma to get those 3 headers. And obviously defensively, I think she played really well too. And then the last thing I'll say here, I thought Chelsea played a really smart game. So when you look at the stats, possession was sort of even. Chelsea doubled up on shots on target over City. But I thought they sat back a bit and played as if they wanted to give Myra Ramirez, LJ, later in the match, Aggie Beaver-Jones, room to run. They weren't, and JRK as well, who was an absolute menace. They clearly wanted to protect their side of the field and give those attackers more space, which totally neutralized Fowler and Kettleline. I thought that was a really smart play by Bon Pastor, just because we're not going to play in our attacking third all game and then give Kettleline a chance to just run wild, Fowler a chance to run wild, Murphy as well. So I thought that little stroke really took air out of the City attack. Kettleline, whenever she did have chances, she was playing in a phone booth basically with 3 other people in there with her. It seemed like for most of the match, and it just didn't feel like a Kettleline game that meet him a chance. I totally agree with you. That was it. It was so close. When she caught it and struck it, I was like, there it is. Like it just felt, and I usually know when it's wide, or when it's off, and I'm just like, oh, she got that. I was like, oh my God, damn. Like it's just not going to happen today for them.
Yes. Yes, you're preaching to choir on that one. That was I thought it was going in too, for sure. And it's such a great point by you about Kettleline. I mean, she had the one shot that our guy Chris Sharples, again, another Sharples match, referred to. I think it was. I want to say it was first half. It might have been first half, or might have been early second half. And Sharples referred to it as a palm stinger for Hannah Hampton, who was definitely up for it. And it was a good shot by Gettoline, but that was her best chance of the match. Really kind of felt like her only like legit chance. But Hampton was always going to save it. She was all over it. There was another good. I thought and oh yeah, sorry to kind of expand on why I think you're dead on about the way Bonpastor kind of let Gettoline and Fowler kind of come at them, at times, but keep them at bay. I thought Fowler played pretty well. I thought Fowler was probably her and Hasegawa were probably the best field players for City. It's just they weren't allowed to ever, Fowler in particular, she had one really good chance where she gets the ball under her left foot. I think she was either just inside the 18 or just outside the 18. She was right there on the boundary, and she ripped one. And Hampton was up for that one too. So, I mean, once you you limit City's best attacking players' chances, and then you have room to run, because kind of the inverse of that was, all those goals where they're just like they are dead on sprinting at City's defense. And nobody will ever convince me otherwise that Lucy Bronze did not call bank and purposely hit that off the post so Baltimore could score it. I know that's not realistic, but I'm going to believe that in my head because Bronze is such a legend and such a genius. It's just, they were too much. You're dead on about Natalie Bjorn. And you know what, Natalie, if you want a lot of playing time and they're going to bring in Girma, City has a couple of bucks. I wouldn't Seattle Raid. No. We got bigger fish to fry, buddy. This is look, man, I wore the hoodie because I ain't never running from the squad. I always rep my team no matter what happens, disastrous results or not. Natalie Bjorn, come to Manchester. Come play for Manchester City. We got a spot for you.
I love that. Yeah, and speaking of that back line, wild to see Alexandri. What Myra Ramirez physically able to shrug off a player like Alexandri was just like, oh my God, like her strength is just off the charts. Yeah. Wahhabi had a few rough moments. I'm not sure what she's doing. A 30-yard back pass to Pryor. That's the one that gets picked off. I'm just like, where was that go? I mean, just totally off kilter. But what we talked about in terms of factors coming into this one, this is the fourth of 4 matches against Chelsea, one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the world at worst. And then you add to that the injuries. Chelsea already had a depth advantage just coming into this season. Before anyone goes down, just line up, player for player, they have a massive depth advantage over almost every team in the world. So to kind of the war of attrition nature of these back to back, matches between these two teams, it was kind of always going to go this way. But even, to your point, City held up so well, was in it to the absolute very end of it. They just they didn't have the personnel. They didn't have the depth. They didn't have, the extra legs. They didn't have the subs that they were able to bring in. You watch a player like Lauren James just skating out there, just flowing, just like she looks like, like a roller skater in the 80s, just backwards, sideways, just weaving in and out, just doing whatever she wants, barely breaking a sweat. And then, that's just the benefit of having that much talent on one team. Chelsea gets it done. They advance to the semis.
Yeah, man. I think we talked about in the first leg, I really liked Lily Murphy's performance in the first half of the first leg. I really liked Gracie Pryor's performance in the first leg. They're 20. Well, how old is Lily Murphy? She's a damn teenager, I think. Yeah, she's 19. Gracie Pryor is 20. They did not play well in this second leg. And I don't begrudge them for a millisecond about that. They're 19 and 20 years old in the second leg of a Champions League quarterfinal.
I'm going to push back a little bit on Pryor because they were going at Pryor. They were going at that matchup. It looked like in the NFL, the backup corner, it's just like, well, let's just throw at that guy all day. And let's let him grow up or not grow up. They were going at Pryor like that was where Chelsea wanted to go, clearly by design. I thought she started out a little wobbly. I thought she settled into the game pretty well.
That's fair. She settled into it better. It was the first, I think it might have been both in the first 15 minutes where LJ rips one off her. LJ ripped the one off her in like the first like 8 or 9 minutes. And I was like, oh boy, we can't have that. And then she had another giveaway in like the 15th or 16th. And I was like, yo, Gracie, like you got to get it together here or else we're going to be in huge trouble. And you're right. She came into the game a little better later on. But again, like, I just don't expect it was a bonus when they played well in that first leg. And this experience is ultimately going to benefit them in the long run. Like, I mean, it's a relatively famous quote when Guardiola took over the men's side at City and he kind of and like everybody's like, okay, well, you're going to show up and the goal is to win the Champions League. And Pep said something to the effect of, this club has no history in the Champions League. Like we have to do stuff in the Champions League before you can actually try to win it. And so I take that approach with players. I know we've talked about it with young players in the NBA too. Like you don't just show up and win big right away. Like you have to go through some stuff before you do it. And I expect it from Murphy and Pryor. You and I have talked about them. They're obviously good players. They just need to kind of build that resume.
Yeah, and I think I want to circle back real quick too when we're talking about the young players. Kiera Keating, 20 years old. We mentioned 7 big saves. Stepping in for Yamashita. You look at the FOTMob app, and they don't even have the name or the player profile for who the backup keeper was for City. It just says keeper with no
amazing,
with no profile, no thumbnail or anything. I'm just like, oh my God. I went back and was just looking into that. I thought Keating was really, really solid. And there was a time early in the season, they bring in Yamashita. That's got to like rock a player's confidence a little bit, just kind of be like, all right, where do I stand? Is my future here? Is it somewhere else? For her to come back, play really, really well and hold her own 100% after that early season wobble. So cool to see.
She even had a weird moment in this match where she played a pass out that was a dangerous pass.
Yep.
And Sharon Bowles goes, Kiara Keating, goodness me. Which is, I think there were at least, I think I remember 3 goodness me's off the top of my head. But you can always count on at least one from our pal Chris Sharp, who's one of the best announcers in the game.
I love that. Was it who snuck in a goodness me into when we interviewed him?
You,
I can't remember.
You hit it on the intro, which is just fantastic.
I forgot about that. I remember it was so great. His call in the Miedema almost goal was great too.
That's so good.
He's like, Miedema. I was just like, boom, nailed it. He's just the best. He's the best.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. But to your point, like for Keating to perform like that in an extremely high leverage match, I think it speaks a lot to her mentality on top of just her shot stopping ability. That's nobody's up for questioning that. We know what that is. She's so great. It's good to see her check that other box as well.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so Chelsea advances, and who do they have? Let's see. Let's build up some drama here. No, we won't. Barcelona 6, Wolfsburg 1, 10-2 on aggregate. Barcelona in straight sets with almost a tennis score, 4-1, 6-1.
Nice.
To get past Wolfsburg. 10-2 on aggregate. I joked last week that I thought Barcelona was going to win 30-0. 10-2, not so far out of the ballpark. It's kind of out in the parking lot. I'm just saying. Right. It was tongue in cheek, but I was just like, okay, how close to 30 are we going to get here?
I thought it was a great signal for it. And, a lot of things can happen in a football match. But when Alex Popp loses possession, and she loses possession on her half of the field, I think probably if we're splitting the field in thirds, as we like to do, it was right around the boundary of, I think, the Wolfsburg's defensive third. She loses the ball, and she loses the ball to Aitana Bonmati. First thing that's very bad. Of all players in the world to lose the ball to, you would prefer not to lose the ball to her. The second thing, which just compounds the mistake by like roughly 100 times, is Selma Perejuelo is running in roughly 20 yards of open space while the ball's at the feet of Bonmati, and it's pretty much easy money. It's lob city at that point. Perejuelo scores in the 11th minute, and I was like, okay, this might be a match where I watch the entire first half, and then in the interest of my sleep schedule, watch the highlights of the second half. And that's pretty much how this played out. We talk about Lyon as a super weapon. Barcelona is the Death Star right now, and it's fully operational.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, 21-4 shots advantage, 15 shots from inside the box, touches inside the opposition box, 36-3. That's quite tough. The advantage. Shots on target, 8-2. Scoring spread out all over the place. Perejuelo gets a second goal too, about 10 minutes after the first, with an assist from Esme Brooks. Esme Brooks scores right before halftime to make it 3. I thought Brooks had a great game. 3 shots, 2 on target, 1 goal, 1 assist. And she covers so much ground, almost allows Barca to play like a 3-4-3. Like you just see her and she's always this way upfield, and she could drop all the way back. She can get all the way forward and, pretty much be effective everywhere in between. And then the last quick note on Perejuelo, I think it's awesome for Barcelona to have Perejuelo back in scoring form in the Champions League. That's huge for them.
Yeah, I mean, she was running, up and down the field. Obviously, we know her track and field background. She looked more confident than it feels like she has in the last few weeks. I'm glad you point out Brutes as well. I mean, we've referred to her as Barcelona's nuclear weapon back there at left back. I wrote in my notes when she added the third goal, that was just her detonating from 20 yards out. And I mean, if anybody recalls my prediction, I predicted Barcelona 3-0. That was what you may not have heard it in the last. That was my halftime prediction. So right on there, I totally nailed it.
Yep. I went too hard with the edit. I cut off that last bit. So
That's it.
Apologies on there. Yeah, man. This one, everything for Barcelona on display: constant movement, precision passing, the spacing, perfectly timed runs, the instinctive strikes. You talked about that Brooks strike. That was like right there. Like they just did everything in this match that Barcelona does. To pretty much smash a team like Wolfsburg 6-1. Not a bullshit team. This was a big win. A really, really big win. Kind of a statement win for them, I would say. And I thought everybody was locked in. You look at Barcelona, they had 7 players that completed 93% of their passes. 7 players. That's ridiculous. Mapi, Yana, Bonmati, Paredes, Brooks, and then 2 subs, Engen and Schurtenleib. I wrote my notes like at the 20th minute. I'm like, get Schurtenleib in there. Like, what are we
there
doing?
We go.
And then to see Schurtenleib in the defensive midfield with Alexia was really cool. They're definitely looking for a place to put, like, what are our options here? I think was what Romeo was doing. To see her there was pretty cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, and what evidence do we have that she can't play almost anywhere on the
Zero.
field? I don't know. Yeah, like play her at center back. She has great size too. I don't know. Like, you just figure it out at that point. I mean, they just have, they're just the Monstars all over the field. They're bigger than you. They're faster than you. They're more skilled than you. They're smarter than you. All these things. And like you said, Wolfsburg is full of talent, and they had no shot in these 2 ties. Absolutely no shot.
Yep, totally done. And then, we talked about Pina up top, bringing on a player like that. Pina gets 32 minutes of action, 22 touches. We talked about Caicedo up top as well. 20 touches in 90 minutes, like night and day there. So with her 22 touches, Claudia Pina, 4 shots, 2 on target, 2 goals. I mean, unbelievable. Mapi Lyon hits the free kick, to just the absolute icing on the cake, absolute stunner of a free kick. Probably that Mapi free kick, probably the best free kick goal I had seen in, I would say, 13 or 14 minutes since Pina's free kick that also knocked it off the post. Just ridiculous to have like that much skill be able to score every possible, every imaginable way Barcelona could beat you.
Let's. We like to do it on this podcast, so we might as well date ourselves again. The Michael Jordan, Larry Bird commercial where they're playing horse,
Yeah.
and they're doing like off the backboard, off the scoreboard, off the row H, off the backboard. Like it felt like that's what Pina and Mappy were doing at that point. We're just like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to like carve it right off the intersection of the post and the crossbar here. It's just like what like you have no chance as a goalkeeper in those situations.
No, I mean they're lasers and they're pinpoint accurate. So you think you're doing something defensively, fouling, stopping the chance, and you're just you're just delaying the inevitable. It's really brutal. Obviously, Barcelona, probably the favorites at worst, the co-favorites to win the whole thing. They get Chelsea in a rematch of last year's semifinal. We talked a lot last year about Chelsea's, probably feeling like they let that one get away. They go to Barcelona, get the goal, get the win, come back to Stamford Bridge, Buchanan red card. They give up 2 good goals, but like kind of like almost like scrappier, type goals. Had to feel like they left that on the table. I think they're going to come into this one. It's weird because they do feel a little bit roughed up. They feel a little bit more roughed up than they did last year, Chelsea. It felt like they were in better rhythm. Offense was humming, I think, a little bit better last year. But they do have some wild cards. Bon Pastor, we saw what she did to kind of like neutralize City's attack. Sandy Baltimore, another addition. We saw what she was able to do. Bjorn getting more playing time. That's been a big improvement. JRK, we talked about, Canrud. Super hot start at the beginning of the season, cooled off a little bit mid-season, and now seems to be back in top form. I think Sharples also talked. It was either Sharples or his partner, who, apologies, but the color commentator.
Can I do it real quick?
Yes, please.
So Chris's partner on the Arsenal Madrid match was Courtney Sweetman Kirk, who was fantastic. And then Sharple's partner on the City match was Lindsey Johnson. And they were both fantastic.
Yeah.
But both teams, absolutely great.
Yeah. I kept writing stuff down and being like, oh, I think I got something here. And she would just nail my point and like do it 10 times better. I was like, okay, scratch it out. Sure. Get that out of here. I mean, great, added, ton of insight into kind of what was happening. So I think, and I think she had talked about Canrud deserving a goal after that performance, and she was definitely hunting for it, and she was right on the money. I thought Canrud was really great. What do you think about this matchup? Do you think Chelsea's got a shot?
Yeah, they have to have a shot. I think it would be too disrespectful if I said they didn't have a shot. It's, put my odds maker hat on. I would say Barcelona minus 220 to advance.
Okay. Yeah, I had minus 275 in my mind. I was like, I think they're probably a little lengthier. I'm thinking back to the semifinal last year. Barcelona didn't have any answers for Ramirez and Ashley Lawrence on the left side of the field. Like that link up, the physicality, the length, the strength really, really gave Barcelona problems. I don't think Chelsea's going to be able to do the exact same thing. Obviously the personnel's a little different and Barcelona's going to be a little bit better prepared for it. But I do think that physicality could be something. And I think LJ, we've been joking that she's maybe in third gear, second gear. Sometimes she'll kick it up to fourth if she's feeling a little frisky. I still feel like we haven't seen absolute peak, 24 and under Lauren James yet. Basically that LeBron versus the Pistons moment, where it's just like, oh, okay, this player is just going to take over now. Like this player is going to just own this next 20, 25 minutes of the match. I think that's well within her skill set. She's playing that way. They haven't quite needed it. But I think against Barcelona, we're going to need to see a very special addition of Lauren James in addition to Ramirez, Canarud. Maybe Aggie Beaver Jones has something to say about it. Cuthbert, we saw what she did last year at Barcelona. They're going to need everybody, like Natalie Bjorn, another perfect example. A player that elevates, she 3 real good looks at goal, puts one off the crossbar, needs Miedema to kind of like get a wicked block off the line to prevent the second one. And then a player like Natalie Bjorn gets the third one. Very cool to see. They're going to need a lot of that. They're going to need pretty much everybody either performing at their potential or maybe even exceeding the potential. But it's possible. I think, we've seen, Barcelona's not, they're not invincible. I think we've already seen that this season, but somehow still feels like Barcelona's still with very much the upper hand heading into the semis.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, until proven otherwise, and me, obviously, as the Barcelona guy, it's why I pointed out I think I'd take their forwards over Lyon's forwards. I think it's well established at this point. I am the Barcelona guy on this podcast. You just have to assume that that the champ is going to hold their title. They have to be knocked out, both figuratively and literally, before I think we start really looking at other options here. But I'm so glad you mentioned Ashley Lawrence because she was fucking huge in those semifinal matches last year, especially in the first leg. She has not played in a Champions League match since she played 19 minutes on December 17th, 2024 against Real Madrid. And, she was on the bench versus City in this last match. And so that Chelsea defense that held Barcelona to only 4 shots on target across those 2 legs last year included Jess Carter, Kadisha Buchanan, and Ashley Lawrence. And we're definitely not going to see Jess Carter and Kadisha Buchanan. And I don't mean to chuckle about Buchanan who suffered an injury, but Jess Carter lives in New York now. So, we're not going to – it's a totally different defensive makeup that's going to go up against this team. And Chelsea, at some point, is going to get the Sydney Shirt-and-Live experience. And I'm sure they're going to be similar to us. Now, they're professionals and they're great athletes. But at some point, somebody's going to look at the other person and be like, what the fuck is this with Shirt-and-Live? Because she seems to have that effect on people. So, I think the last point I'll make is, we talk about this Chelsea backline, who I'm starting to call, as long as Gurm is not playing, the Killer Bees, Baltimore, Bright, Bjorn, and Bronze. We saw Sandy Baltimore have some problems with Gedolin, and now she's going to have to go up against JRK. And, how you rate Gedolin versus Ritz and Canarud.
Sandy Baltimore is not JRK. She's going to...
Yeah, she's playing JRK. I'm sure she's playing with JRK on the same team. This is what happens when your boy is tired. She's going to have to play against Caroline Graham Hansen on the right side. So that's going to be tricky. Sorry, I got my notes there. JRK is Swedish.
JRK, CGH.
CGH is North. We got a Swede and a Norwegian. I made all kinds of mistakes there. My apologies. Thank you for catching that. So it doesn't get easier going against CGH. So I'll be very interested to see how Chelsea's defense holds up. Early prediction, like we said, I just think Barcelona has to be the favorite, but I'm very interested to see what that first leg is going to look like. Because let me just do another quick fact check. First leg is in Barcelona, just like last year when Chelsea got that very improbable 1-0 victory. So, that's probably looming large in the back of the heads of a lot of these Barca players as well.
Yeah. I think, we talked about young players for sure. Shirt-and-Live you mentioned on one side, Vika Kaptan on the other. I think we've seen her play really, really well. And then also maybe kind of, not disappear a little bit into the background in some of these matches. But this is going to be a huge spot for a young player like that. Definitely within the possibility. I still kind of feel like it's weird because I feel like Chelsea got better and Barcelona probably at worst is as good as last year. But for some reason, I feel like Barcelona maybe has a wider advantage than they did last season. I'm not sure what's at play there. I just think it's a good matchup. I think it's a good matchup for Barcelona personnel wise. I think they're really, really cooking. Coming off that Wolfsburg, those two matches, the scoring is just there, and I think if they get chances, they're just going to put the ball in the back of the net. And I think we've seen Chelsea's offense kind of stall out a little bit if it's not the right 10 or if it's not the right lineup or if it's just, kind of like not set up the right way from the onset. So I think they could. I came into the tournament thinking Chelsea might be in the driver's seat. I definitely have cooled off there. I kind of feel like Barcelona. The more I'm talking about it, I think they make slightly easy work of Chelsea, and part of it, I think too. I think part of it too is it's been a slog this year for the Blues. They've had a ton of tough matches. You would imagine, with the lineups and who was available against City, that they would have had maybe a bigger score line and maybe that tie was in the balance the latest of the four matchups. I think Arsenal and Madrid was a wrap. We talked about that one earlier. So I don't think there's something about Chelsea that's not quite fully clicked. And, maybe Bon Pastore, it's going to take a season or two to make it happen. This is obviously her first year. But there's something that doesn't quite feel right about their chances against Barca. I think Barca cruises relatively easy.
I like it. And I'll share this bit of information. I was talking to the Shadow executive producer about this. I'll tell you, I'm an objective journalist, but some of that hater is rising up in me. And I was just like, you know what? I think I'm about sick of this Chelsea team. I'm still mad that City lost the title last year. And when they lost that game to your Gunners, then Chelsea went out and beat Bristol 8-0 or something like that to totally erase the goal differential on the same day. And I'm just like, you know what? I think I've had my fill of Chelsea Football Club. And you know what? And obviously I'm the Barcelona guy on the show, so no disrespect to the players on Chelsea, but I am here for a mopping of Chelsea in this one, and hopefully, I don't even want to say hopefully. I want to see good. I want to see good matches, but I agree with you. I think Barcelona's going through to the final second year in a row, for them, multiple years in a row. I think it's going to be Chelsea. I think it's going to be Barcelona, Lyon in the final yet again.
Yep, I could definitely see that happening. And just to rewind a little bit, Getwell, Khadisha Buchanan, the fifth B in the Killer Bees. Definitely did mean to make light of that injury. I miss seeing that player for sure on the pitch. But I agree with you. I loved seeing Chelsea lose well before this foray into women's football ever got started. So I think I'm with you in spirit. Let's go. I want to see Barcelona in the final, maybe against my Gunners, but realistically, Barcelona Lyon, I think would be a juicy matchup. And then just to jump way, way into the future, I might like Lyon in that matchup. We'll see. There's a lot of football left to be played. We're going to see. We're going to see health wise, but I feel like I don't want to say that's the best team. That's an interesting. Who do you feel like is the best team you've seen through this stretch? Because I feel like for me, I think it's Lyon 1A, Barcelona 1B. I think when you stack it all up, the defense, the midfield, the finishing, the punishing physicality, it's tricky because we watch Arkema and we don't really learn a ton. But then when you see Lyon in the Champions League, and we're constantly like, oh, well, let's see what it looks like. I remember feeling, let's see what it looks like against Bayern. A real team, the champions of Germany. It's a fucking walk. Shout out to Bayern. They came out, they played super hard, like you mentioned. It reminded me of when I ran a 5K in my early 20s. And, I wanted to feel how Bayern felt. I wanted to just sprint at the beginning and just be up, in the front and just be like, oh man, and I might surprise you. In that 5K, I sprinted probably the first mile, and it was a terrible strategy. I ran my slowest 5K of all time.
Yes.
But I was up front the first 3-4 minutes, and it felt fucking amazing. But long story short, Lyon I think is probably. I think their peak Lyon for me. It's tough to say. It's really tough to say.
That's my thing.
I'm glad we're going to get a few weeks to sort all this out. We're going to get to watch more football. We're going to get to, crunch some numbers, get the old Apple, TUI, cranked up, plugged back in, dusted off, smoke coming out of the top of it. And then really kind of figure out, how to make a proper prediction. But I'm not going to say that it's Barcelona's tournament to lose. I guess I'll leave it at that.
That's fair. I don't know if it's Barcelona's tournament to lose. And I think the reason I blurted out, that's my thing, is when you said, you started to say, is peak Lyon better than Barcelona's peak? Has Lyon probably had the most consistently impressive results in the Champions League this year? I think so. But at their absolute apex between both teams, I think it's Barcelona by a nose, because when Payeur, Beruelo, Bonmati, Alexia, Pina, Kika of Nazareth for a while, who's now out with an injury, but when they hit their ceiling, or when multiple players on the field are hitting their ceiling at the same time, it just feels like they're nearly impossible to beat. So I think I like Barcelona's apex a little more, but in the context of this broader tournament, you don't get a trophy for it, but I think Lyon has probably been the best team over the course of the Champions League matches that have been played.
Yep. I think probably. I think that the totality of their performances, offense, defense, possession, midfield, just taking advantage of chance. And I think that has been, they've checked every box for me, and I think we've seen Barcelona, come and go, they're just so good. That's why they play the games. That's why we do the show to have fun,
there you go.
Working these noodles, figuring out, who we want, what we want to predict, what we think is going to happen, and then breaking down what actually happened. That's what makes all this so fun. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
I think that's it. I mean, people can fact check me on this, but so Lyon didn't lose in the group stage. Chelsea didn't lose in the group stage. Barcelona lost one in the group stage to City. And then Chelsea loses that first leg match. I think Lyon is the only team in the tournament. They got to be. Of the last four, yeah. Lyon's the only team that has not lost a match. But I think that speaks to your point of the totality. Just apex Barcelona, the only team that I think can challenge them, obviously resides in Orlando, Florida.
Let's go. You already know what time it is.
Just as any football fan would expect.
I will say though, I'm not that Moppy free kick, that Pina free kick, love Anna Morehouse. I don't know if Anna's not reaching either of those, but probably not a lot of keepers are. No knock on her. Quick look ahead. I want to do something NWSL wise. Obviously, 3 weeks in the books. I don't think it's worth necessarily breaking down this past weekend, but I kind of want to do a 3 week, check in. We got an international break coming up. Maybe we'll put together some power rankings. We'll figure out what we do there. But I do want to talk some NWSL now that we have a pretty decent sample size. In addition to that, U.S. Women's National Team in action, back-to-backers against Brazil, one in L.A., one in the Bay Area. That will be really fun. I think we saw Brazil's lineup get announced here very recently. So we'll definitely have really solid coverage along those lines as well. I already asked you this, but is there anything else we need to hit before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it. I wanted to get off that. I think Lyon's undefeated so far in the Champions League. But who else is undefeated? SK Braun. That's the last thing I want to throw in. Undefeated in top Syrian right now, and obviously everybody knows this is an SK Braun podcast.
Yep. Bergen versus everybody. You already know what time it is. This has been another episode of Into the Channel. Thank you for hanging out. If you enjoyed the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, make sure you're kicking out with us each and every single week. Like if you liked, subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. We want to hear from you. We love hearing from you. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode, step one. And a big thank you to my co-host as well. Semifinal, I don't know. Pete Grant. Have we seen Pete Grant yet? I'm not sure we have.
Lord.
But Apex Grant, we've seen Apex Grant in flashes. But I think this week we definitely saw an extended run of Apex Grant. I appreciate you, bro.
Likewise, buddy. I appreciate you looking out for me. I think Apex Grant felt more like those first legs where I was crushing those predictions as opposed to me getting pretty much a lot of things wrong in this second week. But you know what? That's why we do this. And we appreciate all of you dropping knowledge in the comments, always helping us out, helping fill in the gaps, chopping it up with us. Thank you for that. And we will see you all next time.